You'll die in there! Marcus Johnson heard the screams behind him. He didn't stop. He ran straight into the wall of fire. 38 years old, single father, black man, with nothing but his bare hands and a crowbar. Inside that burning wreck was a woman he'd never met, a billionaire's daughter, a 25-year-old CEO who had everything he didn't. He had 12 seconds before the gas tank exploded. What she whispered to him in that ambulance would destroy his entire life, and then rebuild it in ways he never imagined possible. Comment your city below. Let's see how far this story travels. Marcus Johnson's hands were already bleeding when he heard the first scream. "Mister, don't! You'll die!" He didn't turn around. He kept running, straight toward the overturned Mercedes engulfed in flames on Highway 58. Behind him, a woman in a minivan was screaming at him to stop. Her husband was pulling their kids back into the car. 3 other vehicles had already sped past, their drivers too terrified to even slow down. Marcus understood their fear. The wildfire had jumped the highway 15 minutes ago. The air was thick with smoke and ash. Visibility was down to maybe 30 feet. Any sane person would be driving in the opposite direction as fast as possible. But Marcus had seen the crash happen. He'd watched the black Mercedes swerve to avoid a burning tree branch that had fallen across the road. He'd seen it clip the guardrail, flip twice, and land on its roof, directly in the path of the advancing flames. And he'd seen movement inside. Someone was alive in there. "Come back! The whole thing's gonna blow!" Marcus reached the vehicle and dropped to his knees. The heat hit him like a physical force, pushing against his chest, stealing the breath from his lungs. His eyes watered instantly. His skin felt like it was already starting to blister. Through the shattered driver's side window, he saw her, young, blonde hair matted with blood, eyes wide with terror, hanging upside down from her seatbelt, trapped in the wreckage. "Help me," she whispered. "Please, help me." "I'm here," Marcus said. "I'm going to get you out." "I can't move. My leg, something's pinning my leg." Marcus looked at the crushed dashboard. The steering column had collapsed, trapping her left leg at an angle that made his stomach turn. "What's your name?" he asked, jamming his crowbar into the doorframe. "Olivia." "Okay, Olivia. I'm Marcus. I need you to stay calm. Can you do that for me?" "I'm trying." The door wouldn't budge. Marcus repositioned the crowbar, put his entire body weight behind it, and pulled. Metal screamed. The door shifted half an inch. Not enough. "Where's your driver?" Marcus asked, straining against the crowbar. "He ran," Olivia's voice cracked. "He said he was going to get help, but he ran and didn't come back." Rage flared in Marcus's chest. He'd been a firefighter for 11 years before his injury. He'd seen cowards before. People who froze. People who panicked. But abandoning a trapped woman in a burning vehicle? That was something else entirely. "Listen to me," Marcus said. "I'm not leaving you. You understand? I'm not going anywhere until you're out of this car." "Why?" Olivia asked. "You don't even know me." "Doesn't matter." Marcus threw everything he had into the crowbar. The door groaned, shrieked, and finally gave way with a sound like a gunshot. He tossed the crowbar aside and reached through the opening. "I'm going to cut your seatbelt first," he said, pulling out his pocket knife. "Then I need to free your leg. It's going to hurt. I'm not going to lie to you." "Just do it, please. I can smell the gasoline." So could Marcus. The fuel tank was leaking. They had minutes, maybe less. He sliced through the seatbelt and caught Olivia before she could fall. She cried out in pain as her weight shifted onto her trapped leg. "I know," Marcus said. "I know it hurts. Hold on to my shoulders." Olivia grabbed him, her fingers digging into his work shirt. He could feel her trembling. "On 3, Marcus said. "I'm going to push the steering column. When I do, you pull your leg free. 1. Wait. 2. I can't. 3. Marcus pushed with everything he had. Years of construction work, of lifting heavy beams and hauling equipment, had made him strong. But this was different. This was desperation. This was a father thinking about his own daughter, imagining her trapped in a burning car while strangers drove past. The column shifted. Olivia screamed, and her leg came free. "I got you!" Marcus pulled her through the window, cradling her against his chest. She was lighter than he expected. Young, maybe mid-20s, wearing clothes that cost more than his monthly rent. None of that mattered. He ran. His lungs were on fire. His eyes were streaming. Every breath felt like swallowing broken glass. But he kept running, putting as much distance as possible between them and the Mercedes. 20 feet, 30 feet, 40 feet. The explosion knocked him off his feet. Marcus twisted in midair, turning his body so that when they hit the ground, he took the impact. Olivia landed on top of him, shielded from the worst of the blast. Burning debris rained down around them. Marcus covered her head with his arms, feeling embers burn through his shirt and into his skin. When it was over, he looked down at her. "You okay?" Olivia stared at him with an expression he couldn't read. Shock, maybe. Disbelief. "You saved me," she whispered. "Can you move? Is anything broken?" "My leg. I think my leg is broken. But I'm alive." Her voice caught. "I'm alive because of you." Sirens wailed in the distance. Marcus sat up slowly, every muscle in his body screaming in protest. "Stay still," he said. "Help is coming. Don't leave me." "I'm not going anywhere." They sat together on the side of the highway, watching the Mercedes burn, waiting for the ambulances to arrive. Olivia hadn't let go of his hand. "What's your name again?" she asked. "Marcus. Marcus Johnson." "Marcus." She said it like she was memorizing it, like it was the most important word she'd ever learned. "Thank you, Marcus." "You don't need to thank me." "Yes, I do. Everyone else drove past. Dozens of cars. They all just drove past." Marcus didn't know what to say to that. He'd asked himself the same question 100 times over the years. Why did some people run toward danger while others ran away? What made the difference? He didn't have an answer. He just knew that when he'd seen that car flip, when he'd seen movement inside, there had been no choice. Not really. His body had moved before his mind could stop it. The ambulance arrived 4 minutes later. Paramedics swarmed around them, checking vitals, asking questions, loading Olivia onto a stretcher. "Sir, you need treatment too," one of them said, pointing at Marcus's hands. "Those burns look serious." "I'm fine." "Sir, just take care of her." Olivia reached out and grabbed his wrist as they lifted the stretcher into the ambulance. "Wait," she said. "I need to know. Why did you do it? You could have died. You almost died. Why would you risk your life for a stranger?" Marcus looked at her, at this young woman he'd never met before tonight, at the tears streaming down her face, cutting tracks through the ash and blood. "Because everybody's somebody's daughter," he said quietly. "And I've got a daughter at home who's waiting for me. If she was ever trapped like that, I'd want someone to stop. I'd want someone to try." Olivia's grip tightened on his wrist. "What's her name? Your daughter?" "Zoe. She's 12. "Zoe," Olivia smiled weakly. "That's a beautiful name." "Sir, we need to go," the paramedic said. Olivia released his wrist, but her eyes never left his face. "I'm going to find you, Marcus Johnson," she said as they began to close the ambulance doors. "I don't know how, but I'm going to find you, and I'm going to repay this debt." You don't owe me anything." "Yes, I do, and I always pay my debts." The doors closed. The ambulance pulled away. Marcus stood alone on the side of the highway, watching the taillights disappear into the smoke. His hands were shaking. Now that the adrenaline was fading, the pain was starting to set in. His palms were blistered and raw. His arms were covered in burns. His lungs felt like they'd been scoured with sandpaper. But he was alive, and so was she. That was all that mattered. Marcus didn't go to the hospital. He couldn't afford it. He got back in his truck, drove home to the small apartment he shared with Zoe, and let himself in as quietly as possible. It was almost midnight. She should be asleep. She wasn't. Zoe was waiting for him at the kitchen table, her homework spread out in front of her, her phone clutched in her hand. "Dad!" She launched herself at him before he could even close the door. Marcus caught her, wincing as her arms wrapped around his injured torso. "Where were you? I called you like 100 times. There's wildfires all over the news, and you weren't answering, and I thought—" "I'm okay, baby. I'm okay." Zoe pulled back and looked at him. Really looked at him. Her eyes went wide. "Dad, your hands. What happened to your hands?" Marcus looked down at his palms. The blisters had burst during the drive home. Blood and fluid were seeping through the makeshift bandages he'd fashioned from his undershirt. "I helped someone tonight," he said. "There was an accident. Someone was trapped." "You ran into a fire?" "It wasn't that bad." "Dad, you're burned!" "I know, but I'm okay. Really." Zoe's eyes filled with tears. "You're not okay. You need to go to the hospital." "We can't afford the hospital, baby. You know that." "I don't care. You're hurt." "Zoe." Marcus knelt down so he was at eye level with his daughter. "Look at me. I'm fine. I've had worse burns than this. Remember when I was a firefighter? This is nothing." "That was before your back injury. You're not supposed to do stuff like this anymore." "I know, but sometimes you don't have a choice." Zoe wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Was it a kid? The person you saved?" "No, a young woman, maybe 25. "Did she make it?" Yeah, she made it." Zoe was quiet for a moment. Then she wrapped her arms around him again, more gently this time. "I'm proud of you, Dad," she whispered. "But please don't ever scare me like that again." Marcus held his daughter tight. "I'll try, baby. I'll try." That night, after he'd cleaned his wounds as best he could and bandaged them with supplies from their meager first aid kit, Marcus lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. He thought about Olivia, about the fear in her eyes, about the way she'd grabbed his hand and refused to let go. He thought about what she'd said. "I'm going to find you. I'm going to repay this debt." Rich people said things like that all the time. It never meant anything. They'd go back to their mansions and their fancy cars and their high-powered jobs, and they'd forget all about the regular people who crossed their paths. Marcus had seen it before, been burned by it before, in more ways than one. He closed his eyes and tried to sleep. 3 days later, someone knocked on his apartment door. Marcus was sitting at the kitchen table, trying to figure out how to pay the electric bill with the $37 left in his checking account. His hands were still bandaged. His boss had given him the week off, without pay, because he couldn't hold a hammer. He opened the door and froze. A woman stood in the hallway, late 50s, silver hair pulled back in an elegant bun, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Marcus made in a month. Behind her was a younger woman in a wheelchair, blonde hair, leg in a cast. Olivia. "Mr. Johnson," the older woman said, "my name is Victoria Sterling. I'm Olivia's mother. May we come in?" Marcus stepped aside, suddenly very aware of the peeling wallpaper, the stained carpet, the second-hand furniture that had seen better days a decade ago. "I'm sorry," he said. "The place is a mess. I wasn't expecting—" "Please don't apologize," Victoria said. "We're the ones intruding." She walked into the apartment like she owned it, because women like her owned everything. But there was no judgment in her eyes, just curiosity, and something else Marcus couldn't quite identify. Olivia wheeled herself forward, stopping directly in front of Marcus. "I told you I'd find you," she said. "You did." "It wasn't easy. You didn't exactly leave a forwarding address." "Didn't think you'd actually look." "Why not?" Marcus shrugged. "People say things in the moment, in the heat of it all. Doesn't usually mean anything after." "It meant something to me." Victoria cleared her throat. "Mr. Johnson, I need to thank you. What you did for my daughter." Her voice broke. She paused, composing herself. "When I got the call that there had been an accident, that Olivia was in critical condition, my whole world stopped. And then they told me a stranger had pulled her from a burning vehicle. A stranger who then refused to give his name or accept any reward." "I didn't do it for a reward." "I know. That's why we're here." Victoria reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "This is a small token of our appreciation." "No," Marcus shook his head. "Thank you, but no. I can't accept that." "Mr. Johnson." "I mean it. I didn't save your daughter for money. I did it because it was the right thing to do." Victoria stared at him. "Do you have any idea who we are?" "No, ma'am. Should I?" Olivia laughed. It was a bright, unexpected sound in the shabby apartment. "Mom, I told you, he doesn't know." "Know what?" Marcus asked. "Sterling Industries," Victoria said. "We manufacture safety equipment for emergency responders, fire-resistant gear, rescue tools, protective clothing. Our products are used by fire departments in 43 states." Marcus felt something shift in his chest. "You make firefighter gear?" "For 27 years. My late husband started the company. I took over when he passed." "And I'm the CEO now," Olivia added. "Have been since last year." Marcus looked at the young woman in the wheelchair. 25 years old and running a company that made safety equipment for firefighters. There was a strange symmetry to it that made his head spin. "Small world," he said quietly. "Smaller than you think." Victoria set the envelope on the coffee table. "At least let me pay your medical bills." "I didn't go to the hospital." Both women stared at him. "What do you mean you didn't go to the hospital?" Olivia demanded. "Your hands were destroyed. I saw them." "I couldn't afford it. No insurance." "You could have—" Olivia stopped herself. Her face had gone pale. "You saved my life, and then you went home with third-degree burns because you couldn't afford a doctor?" "Second degree, mostly. And they're healing fine." "Let me see." "It's really not—" "Let me see, Marcus." The way she said his name made him pause. There was something in her voice, something fierce and desperate and absolutely unwilling to take no for an answer. He held out his hands. Olivia took them gently, carefully unwrapping the bandages. Victoria gasped softly when she saw the damage. "This is infected," Olivia said. "This whole area here is infected. You need antibiotics. You need proper treatment." "I put some Neosporin on it." "Neosporin? Marcus, you need actual medical care." "And I told you, I can't afford it." Olivia looked up at him, and for the first time, Marcus saw tears in her eyes. "You are the most stubborn, frustrating, infuriating man I have ever met," she said. "You ran into a fire to save a stranger. You refused to give your name. You refused any reward. And now you're refusing medical treatment because of money?" "Money matters when you don't have any." "Then let me give you some." "No." "Why not?" Because I don't take charity, not from anyone. I work for what I have. I earn it. That's how I was raised, and that's how I'm raising my daughter. The apartment went silent. Then Olivia did something Marcus didn't expect. She laughed again, but this time it was softer, almost admiring. You're serious, aren't you? You actually mean all of that? Every word. Then let me offer you something else. Olivia looked at her mother. Mom, tell him. Victoria nodded slowly. Mr. Johnson, my daughter tells me you used to be a firefighter. 11 years. Had to quit 6 years ago. Back injury. But you still ran into that fire. Different kind of physical demand. I couldn't pass the department physical anymore, but I can still... He stopped. Look, it doesn't matter. That life is over for me. What if it didn't have to be? Marcus frowned. What do you mean? Victoria sat down on his worn couch, smoothing her skirt over her knees. Sterling Industries is always looking for consultants, people with real-world experience who can help us design better equipment. People who understand what firefighters actually need, not what engineers think they need. I don't have a degree. I barely finished high school. I don't need a degree. I need someone who's been in the fire, someone who knows what works and what doesn't, someone who's seen equipment fail and watched people die because of it. Marcus's throat tightened. He had seen that. More times than he wanted to remember. The salary would be $85,000 a year, Victoria continued. Full benefits. Health insurance that would cover you and your daughter. And if your back injury could be helped by surgery or physical therapy, we'd cover that too. Marcus couldn't speak. He made $32,000 a year in construction, when work was steady, which it usually wasn't. Why? He finally managed. Why would you do this? Victoria stood and walked toward him. Because you gave me back my daughter, Mr. Johnson. Because you ran toward death when everyone else ran away. Because in 27 years of manufacturing equipment for heroes, I've never actually met one. She reached out and took his bandaged hands in hers. Let me do this, she said softly. Not as charity, not as a reward, as an investment in you, in what you could become, in what you could help us build. Marcus looked at Olivia. She was watching him with those intense blue eyes, waiting for his answer. I need to think about it, he said. I have a daughter. I can't just take all the time you need. Victoria released his hands and picked up the envelope from the coffee table. But in the meantime, please accept this. Consider it a signing bonus, whether you take the job or not. She pressed the envelope into his hands before he could refuse again. Then she walked toward the door. Mom's right, Olivia said, wheeling herself after her mother. Take your time. But Marcus, I hope you say yes. I really do. She paused at the door and looked back at him. You saved my life. Now let me try to change yours. And then they were gone. Marcus stood alone in his apartment, holding an envelope full of money he hadn't earned, thinking about an offer that seemed too good to be true. Because in his experience, things that seemed too good to be true always were. He opened the envelope. Inside was a check for $50,000. Marcus sat down heavily on his couch and stared at the number until the zeros blurred together. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. But the check in his hand said otherwise. And somewhere across town, a young woman in a wheelchair was thinking about a man who'd run into fire without hesitation, without fear, without asking for anything in return. A man who'd looked at her like she was just a person, not a Sterling, not a CEO, not a fortune to be claimed. Just a person worth saving. Olivia Sterling hadn't stopped thinking about Marcus Johnson since the moment those ambulance doors closed, and she wasn't planning to stop anytime soon. Marcus didn't sleep that night. He sat at the kitchen table until 3 in the morning, staring at the check, turning it over in his hands like it might disappear if he looked away. $50,000. More money than he'd ever seen in one place. More than he made in a year and a half of back-breaking construction work. And it came with a job offer that could change everything. $85,000 a year. Health insurance, benefits, a chance to use his firefighting experience again, to actually make a difference instead of just hammering nails and hauling lumber until his body gave out completely. It was everything he'd ever wanted. So why couldn't he say yes? Because Marcus Johnson had learned a long time ago that when something seemed too good to be true, it usually was. Rich people didn't just hand out life-changing opportunities to men like him. There was always a catch, always a price that came due later, when you least expected it. He thought about Victoria Sterling and her elegant suit, her silver hair, her cool confidence. He thought about Olivia in her wheelchair, those intense blue eyes watching him like she was trying to solve a puzzle. What did they really want from him? Dad? Marcus looked up. Zoe was standing in the doorway to her bedroom, rubbing her eyes. Baby, what are you doing up? It's the middle of the night. I heard you moving around. Couldn't sleep. She padded over to the table and sat down across from him. Her eyes fell on the check. What's that? Marcus hesitated. He'd always been honest with Zoe, even when the truth was hard. She was 12, but she'd had to grow up fast. Single-parent household, money always tight, her mother gone since she was 3. Zoe understood things that most kids her age didn't have to think about. The woman I saved, he said slowly. She came here today. With her mother. The one from the fire? Yeah, her name's Olivia. Olivia Sterling. Zoe's eyes widen. Wait, Sterling? Like Sterling Industries? The company that makes firefighter gear? You know them? Dad, everybody knows them. They're like huge. We learned about them in school when we did that unit on American businesses. The founder invented some kind of special fire-resistant material or something. She looked at the check again. Is that from them? Yeah. How much is it? Marcus turned the check so she could see the number. Zoe's mouth fell open. $50,000? Dad, that's... I know. That's more than you make in a whole year. I know, Zoe. So why do you look like somebody died? Marcus ran his hand over his face. His daughter was too smart for her own good sometimes. They offered me a job too, he said. At their company. Consulting work. Helping them design better equipment for firefighters. That's amazing! Dad, that's literally your dream job. It's not that simple. Why not? You saved that woman's life. They want to thank you. What's complicated about that? Marcus leaned back in his chair, feeling the familiar ache in his lower back that never quite went away. Baby, people like the Sterlings don't just give jobs to people like me out of gratitude. There's always something else going on. Something they want. Like what? I don't know. That's what worries me. Zoe was quiet for a moment. Then she reached across the table and took his bandaged hand in hers. Dad, can I say something? And you promise not to get mad? When have I ever gotten mad at you for speaking your mind? I'm serious. So am I. Say what you need to say. Zoe took a deep breath. I think you're scared. Marcus frowned. Scared of what? Scared of good things happening. Scared that if you let yourself hope for something better, it'll get taken away. Like Mom. The words hit Marcus like a punch to the chest. He opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. I was only 3 when she left, Zoe continued. I don't really remember her, but I remember you. I remember how hard you worked to keep us together, How you took double shifts and barely slept and still made sure I had everything I needed. You've been fighting for so long, Dad. Fighting to survive. Fighting to keep us afloat. And I think somewhere along the way, you stopped believing that anything good could happen without a catch. Zoe. But what if there is no catch? What if these people are just grateful? What if they saw something in you that you can't see in yourself? Marcus stared at his daughter, at this wise, beautiful girl who had somehow turned out okay despite everything. When did you get so smart? He asked quietly.
I learned from watching you. Marcus felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. He blinked them away. You really think I should take the job? I think you should at least try. What's the worst that could happen? It could all fall apart. I could fail. I could end up worse off than I am now. Or, Zoe said, it could be the best thing that ever happened to us. You won't know unless you try. She squeezed his hand. You ran into a fire to save a stranger, Dad. You risked your life without even thinking about it. But taking a chance on yourself? That's what scares you? Marcus couldn't argue with that logic. His 12-year-old daughter had just called him out, and she was absolutely right. I'll think about it, he said. Promise? Promise. Zoe smiled and stood up. Good. Now get some sleep. You look terrible. Gee, thanks. Love you, Dad. Love you too, baby. She disappeared back into her room, leaving Marcus alone with the check and his thoughts. He sat there for another hour, turning Zoe's words over in his mind. Scared of good things happening. Stopped believing that anything good could happen without a catch. Was she right? Had he really become so beaten down by life that he couldn't accept help when it was offered? Marcus thought about the past 6 years. The back injury that ended his firefighting career. The construction jobs that paid barely enough to cover rent. The constant scramble to keep the lights on, to put food on the table, to give Zoe some semblance of a normal childhood. He'd been surviving, that was all. Just surviving. But what if there was more? What if this was his chance to actually live again? At 4 a.m, Marcus made his decision. He picked up his phone and found the business card Victoria Sterling had left on his coffee table. Her personal cell number was written on the back in elegant handwriting. His thumb hovered over the screen. Then he typed out a message. Mrs. Sterling, this is Marcus Johnson. If the offer still stands, I'd like to discuss the position. I have some conditions. He hit send before he could change his mind. The response came less than a minute later, despite the hour. Mr. Johnson, the offer absolutely still stands. Name your conditions. I'm listening. Marcus took a deep breath and started typing. 2 weeks later, Marcus walked through the front doors of Sterling Industries headquarters for the first time. The building was massive, glass and steel, 30 stories high, with the Sterling Industries logo gleaming in the morning sun. Marcus had driven past it 100 times over the years, without ever imagining he'd set foot inside. Now he was walking through the lobby in a new suit that Olivia had insisted on buying for him. One of his conditions had been that he'd pay her back once he started earning a salary. With a visitor's badge clipped to his lapel and a knot in his stomach the size of a fist. Mr. Johnson. He turned to find a young woman approaching him, tablet in hand, professional smile firmly in place. I'm Rebecca, Mrs. Sterling's executive assistant. I'll be showing you to your office. My office? Yes, sir. On the 23rd floor. Mrs. Sterling wanted you close to the executive suite. Marcus followed Rebecca to the elevator, trying not to stare at everything like a tourist. The lobby alone was bigger than his entire apartment building. The elevator had actual wood paneling and a screen showing the day's news.
When the doors opened on the 23rd floor, Marcus stepped into another world. Everything was sleek, modern, expensive. People in suits walked past with purpose, barely glancing at him. The hum of productivity filled the air. "This way, Mr. Johnson." Rebecca led him down a hallway lined with glass-walled offices. Marcus could see people inside, working at computers, taking calls, having meetings. Everyone looked busy. Everyone looked important.
What the hell was he doing here?
"Here we are." Rebecca stopped in front of a corner office. Not as big as some of the others, but still larger than Marcus's living room. A desk, a computer, a bookshelf, 2 chairs for visitors, and a window with a view of the city that made his head spin. "Mrs. Sterling will be with you shortly," Rebecca said. "Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water?" "Coffee would be great, thank you." Rebecca disappeared, and Marcus was alone. He walked to the window and looked out at the city spread below him. Somewhere out there was his apartment, his old life, the man he used to be. He wondered if that man would recognize him now. "Quite a view, isn't it?" Marcus turned. Victoria Sterling stood in the doorway, impeccably dressed as always, a warm smile on her face. "Mrs. Sterling." "Please, Marcus, I told you to call me Victoria." She walked into the office and gestured for him to sit. "How does it feel? First day on the job?" "Honestly, terrifying." Victoria laughed. "Good. That means you're taking it seriously." She sat down across from him. "I want you to know that I've informed the entire executive team about your background. They know you were a firefighter. They know you saved Olivia. And they know I have complete confidence in your abilities." "Do they share that confidence?" Victoria's smile flickered slightly. "Some do. Some are skeptical." "Because I don't have a degree?" "Because they don't understand why I would hire someone without traditional qualifications for such an important position." "And what did you tell them?" "I told them that traditional qualifications don't mean a damn thing when someone's trapped in a burning building. I told them that your 11 years of experience are worth more than any MBA. And I told them that if they had a problem with my decision, they could take it up with me directly." Marcus studied her. "You're going to bat for me pretty hard, Victoria."
Why?
"Because I believe in you. Because my daughter believes in you. And because this company was built on the idea that the people who protect us deserve the best possible equipment. How can we design that equipment if we don't listen to the people who actually use it?" "Fair point." "I thought so." Victoria stood. "Now, let me introduce you to your team. And don't worry, I'll be right beside you." The next few hours were a blur of names and faces and handshakes. Marcus met engineers and designers and project managers and quality control specialists. Most of them seemed friendly enough, if somewhat reserved. But not everyone. "So you're the hero." Marcus turned to find a man approaching him in the conference room where lunch had been set up. Mid-50s, expensive suit, silver hair slicked back, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'm sorry?" "The man who saved Olivia Sterling from a burning car. The whole company's been talking about it." The man extended his hand. "Richard Caldwell, Chief Operating Officer." Marcus shook his hand, noting the grip that was just slightly too tight. "Marcus Johnson, nice to meet you." "Likewise." Richard's smile widened, but his eyes remained cold. "I have to admit, when Victoria told us she was bringing in a new consultant, I expected someone with a bit more experience. I have 11 years of firefighting experience." "I meant corporate experience. This is a Fortune 500 company, Mr. Johnson. We do things a certain way here. There are protocols, procedures, hierarchies that need to be respected." "I understand that." "Do you?" Richard tilted his head. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you jumped the line." Other people have worked their entire careers to get to where you are right now. And you got here because you happened to be in the right place at the right time. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. With respect, Mr. Caldwell, I got here because I ran into a fire when everyone else ran away.
I got here because I have skills and knowledge that can help this company make better products. And I got here because Victoria Sterling saw value in what I have to offer. Victoria is a sentimental woman. She lets her emotions cloud her judgment sometimes. Is that what you think this is? Sentiment? I think, Richard said slowly, that you're a novelty, a feel-good story that looks good in the press. But novelties wear off, Mr. Johnson, and when they do, people tend to disappear. Before Marcus could respond, a voice cut through the tension. Richard, I didn't know you'd be joining us for lunch. Olivia wheeled herself into the conference room, her expression pleasant, but her eyes sharp. Olivia. Richard's demeanor shifted instantly, his smile becoming more genuine, or at least more practiced. I was just welcoming Mr. Johnson to the team. Were you? How kind. Olivia positioned herself beside Marcus. I hope you were being welcoming and not discouraging. Why would I be discouraging? I don't know, Richard. Why would you?
The two of them stared at each other for a long moment. Marcus could feel the history between them, the tension, the unspoken conflict. Finally, Richard looked away. I should get back to work. Lots to do. Mr. Johnson, I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot of each other. He walked out without another word. Marcus let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. What was that about? Olivia's jaw was tight. Richard Caldwell has been with this company for 20 years. He was my father's right-hand man. When Dad died, Richard thought he would take over as CEO. But you got the job instead. My father wanted it that way. He put it in his will. Richard has never forgiven me for it. She looked up at Marcus. He's going to make your life difficult. I want you to be prepared for that. I can handle difficult. I know you can. That's why I wanted you here. Olivia reached out and touched his arm. But Marcus, don't let him get to you. Richard is a bully. He pushes people until they break, or until they push back. If you push back, he'll respect you. If you don't, I'll end up like the others. There have been others. None of them lasted more than 6 months. Marcus nodded slowly. Good to know. I'm not trying to scare you. You're not. You're giving me information. There's a difference. Olivia smiled. See? This is why I like you. You don't scare easily. Hard to scare a man who's already lost everything once. The words came out before Marcus could stop them. Olivia's smile faded, replaced by something softer, something that looked almost like understanding. Tell me about her, Olivia said quietly. Your wife, Zoe's mother. Ex-wife, and there's not much to tell. We got married young, had Zoe, and then one day she decided that being a mother and a wife wasn't what she wanted anymore. So she left. Just like that? Just like that. Zoe was 3. I came home from a shift to find a note on the kitchen table and half the closet empty. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was a long time ago. Zoe and I did okay on our own. More than okay, from what I can tell. She sounds like an amazing kid. She is. She's the best thing I ever did. Olivia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, My father died 2 years ago. Heart attack. He was at his desk, working late, and his heart just stopped. I'm sorry, Olivia. He was the same age as you are now, 38. She looked up at Marcus with those intense blue eyes. Sometimes I think about how random it all is. Life, death, the people we meet, the choices we make. My father worked himself to death building this company, and he never got to see me run it. And you You could have driven past that accident like everyone else. But you didn't. You stopped. You ran into the fire. And now you're here. Funny how things work out. It's not funny at all. It's terrifying and beautiful.
And completely, utterly unpredictable. Marcus didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. They sat together in the conference room, two people from different worlds, connected by fire and fate, and something neither of them fully understood yet. The afternoon passed quickly. Marcus sat in on meetings, reviewed product designs, asked questions that made the engineers actually stop and think. By 5 o'clock, he'd filled an entire notebook with ideas and observations. Victoria found him in his office as the sun was setting. "How was your first day?" "Exhausting, exhilarating, a little terrifying." "Sounds about right." She sat down across from him. "I heard you met Richard." "Olivia told you?" "Olivia tells me everything. She's worried about you." "She doesn't need to be. I've dealt with men like Richard Caldwell my whole life." Victoria raised an eyebrow. "Have you?" "Mrs. Sterling, Victoria, I'm a black man who grew up in one of the poorest neighborhoods in this city. I've been underestimated, overlooked, and dismissed more times than I can count. I've had bosses who didn't think I was smart enough, teachers who didn't think I'd amount to anything, and strangers who crossed the street when they saw me coming." He met her eyes steadily. "Richard Caldwell thinks I don't belong here because I don't have a degree. That's nothing. That's the easiest criticism I've ever faced. At least he's being honest about it." Victoria was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "You know, Marcus, when I first saw you in that hospital parking lot, when I watched you refuse to give your name, refuse any reward, refuse to even acknowledge what you'd done, I knew you were different. I knew you had something that most people don't have." "What's that?" "Integrity. Real integrity. Not the kind people put on resumes or talk about in interviews. The kind that's built into your bones." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "I don't know about all that." "I do, and so does my daughter." Victoria stood and walked to the window. "Olivia hasn't stopped talking about you since the accident. She thinks you're remarkable. She doesn't know me. She wants to. And I think—" Victoria turned back to face him. "I think you should let her." "Mrs. Sterling, Victoria. Victoria. What are you saying?" Victoria smiled. "I'm saying that my daughter has been through a lot in the past 2 years. Losing her father, taking over the company, the accident. She's been carrying so much weight on her shoulders, and she's done it alone. But when she talks about you, she lights up. I haven't seen her like that in a very long time." Marcus felt his heart rate increase. "I'm not sure I understand." "Yes, you do. You're just too honorable to admit it." She walked to the door, then paused. "Go home, Marcus. See your daughter. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be another long day." "Victoria?" "Yes?" "Thank you. For the job. For believing in me. For all of it." "Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you've changed this company for the better. Thank me when firefighters all over the country are safer because of your ideas." She smiled. "That's when you can thank me." She was gone before he could respond. Marcus sat alone in his new office, watching the last light of day fade over the city, thinking about everything that had happened and everything that was yet to come. He thought about Zoe, waiting for him at home. He thought about Olivia, with her fierce eyes and her quiet strength. He thought about Richard Caldwell and the challenges that lay ahead. And he thought about himself, about who he was and who he was becoming. For the first time in 6 years, Marcus Johnson felt something he'd almost forgotten. Hope. 3 months passed faster than Marcus thought possible. He threw himself into the work with everything he had. Early mornings, late nights, weekends spent reviewing designs and writing reports. The engineers who'd been skeptical at first started seeking him out, asking questions, valuing his input. His ideas were making a difference, real, tangible differences that would save lives. And somewhere along the way, without meaning to, he'd started falling for Olivia Sterling. It happened gradually. Late nights working together in her office, ordering takeout and arguing about product specifications. Lunch meetings that stretched into afternoon conversations. Text messages that started as work-related and slowly became something more personal. She made him laugh. She challenged him. She saw him in a way that no one had seen him in years. But Marcus kept his distance. He had to. She was his boss's daughter. She was 25 years old. She was a billionaire CEO, and he was a former firefighter with a bad back and a 12-year-old daughter. Some lines weren't meant to be crossed. "Dad, you're being stupid." Marcus looked up from his laptop. Zoe was sitting across from him at the kitchen table, her homework abandoned, her arms crossed. "Excuse me?" "You heard me. Stupid. S-T-U-P-I-D. I know how to spell it, Zoe. What I don't know is why you're calling your father stupid." "Because you like Olivia. She likes you. And you're both pretending like nothing's happening." Marcus closed his laptop. "Where is this coming from?" "I have eyes, Dad. I've seen the way you two look at each other. I've seen how you smile when she texts you. And I've definitely seen how she lights up whenever you walk into a room." "You've been spending too much time at Sterling Industries." "Maybe, but that doesn't mean I'm wrong." Marcus sighed. "Zoe, it's complicated." "Why? Because she's rich? Because she's young? Because you're scared?" "I'm not scared." "Then what's the problem?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. How could he explain it to his daughter? How could he make her understand the weight of history, of expectations, of all the ways this could go wrong? "Baby, I work for her family's company. If something happened between us and it didn't work out, I'd lose my job. We'd lose everything we've built these past few months." "Or it could work out, and you'd be happy." "Since when did you become such a romantic?" "Since I saw my dad smiling again." Zoe's voice softened. "You've been different since you started this job. Lighter, like you actually have something to look forward to. I don't want you to lose that because you're too scared to take a chance." Marcus reached across the table and took his daughter's hand. "When did you grow up so fast?" "Somebody had to." He laughed despite himself. "You're too smart for your own good. You know that?" "I learned from the best." The next morning, Marcus arrived at Sterling Industries to find the building buzzing with tension. Rebecca intercepted him at the elevator. "Mr. Johnson, Mrs. Sterling wants to see you immediately, in the executive boardroom." "What's going on?" "I think you should hear it from her." Marcus's stomach tightened as he made his way to the boardroom. When he pushed open the door, he found Victoria, Olivia, and Richard Caldwell seated at the long conference table. Their faces were grim. "Close the door, Marcus," Victoria said. He did, then took a seat across from them. "What's happening?" Victoria slid a tablet across the table toward him. On the screen was a news article with a headline that made his blood run cold. "Sterling Industries CEO's secret romance with rescued hero. Favoritism or fairy tale?" Marcus stared at the words. The article included photos, him and Olivia leaving the building together, eating lunch at a cafe near the office, her touching his arm during what looked like an intimate conversation. "This hit the business news sites an hour ago," Victoria said. "It's already spreading." "I don't understand. We haven't done anything wrong." "That's not how it looks," Richard said,
his voice dripping with barely concealed satisfaction. "The article suggests that Olivia created a position for you specifically because of a romantic relationship. It calls into question the integrity of her leadership and the company's hiring practices." "That's ridiculous. The job was Victoria's idea, not Olivia's." "Doesn't matter. The narrative has already taken hold." Richard leaned forward. "The board is convening an emergency meeting this afternoon to discuss the situation. Some members are calling for an investigation into how you were hired and whether proper protocols were followed." Marcus looked at Olivia. She hadn't said a word since he'd entered the room. Her face was pale, her jaw tight. "Olivia, I'm sorry. I never meant—" "Don't apologize," she said quietly. "You didn't do anything wrong. Neither did I." "The problem," Victoria interjected, "is that perception matters as much as reality in the business world. The board has to protect the company's reputation. If they feel that reputation is being damaged, they'll fire me," Marcus finished. "That's one possibility." "And Olivia? What happens to her?" Richard's smile widened almost imperceptibly. "The board could vote to remove her as CEO, replace her with someone more experienced." "You mean you?" Richard shrugged. "I'm simply stating the facts." Marcus felt rage building in his chest. He knew exactly what was happening. Richard had been waiting for an opportunity like this, a chance to undermine Olivia, to paint her as a naive young woman making decisions based on emotion rather than business sense. And Marcus had handed him that opportunity on a silver platter. "I'll resign," Marcus said. "No," Olivia's voice was sharp. "Absolutely not." "Olivia, if me being here is putting your position at risk—" "I said no!" She stood up, her eyes blazing. "I am not going to let them bully me into abandoning someone I believe in. I am not going to let them dictate who I can hire, who I can spend time with, who I can trust. If the board has a problem with my decisions, they can take it up with me directly." "Olivia," Richard said smoothly, "perhaps you should think about this more carefully. Your judgment has clearly been compromised." "My judgment is fine. What's compromised is your integrity, Richard. You've been waiting for an opportunity like this since the day my father died. Don't think I don't know who leaked those photos to the press." Richard's face went cold. "That's a serious accusation." "Is it? Because I noticed that every single photo in that article was taken from the same angle as the security camera in the parking garage. The camera that only senior executives have access to." The room went silent. Richard stood slowly, his mask of civility slipping. "You have no proof of that." "I don't need proof. I know who you are, Richard. I've always known. You resent me because my father chose me over you. You've been undermining me since the day I took over. And now you think you've found your chance." Olivia stepped toward him, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "But you're wrong. I am my father's daughter, and I don't back down from bullies." "This isn't over, Olivia." "No, it's not. But when it is, you're going to be the one walking out that door. Not Marcus. Not me. You." Richard looked at Victoria, as if expecting her to intervene. Victoria met his gaze coolly. "I believe my daughter has made her position clear, Richard. I suggest you prepare for the board meeting." Richard's jaw tightened. He grabbed his briefcase and stalked out of the room, slamming the door behind him. Marcus let out a breath. "Olivia, you shouldn't have done that." "Why not? It's the truth." "Because now he's going to come after you twice as hard." "Let him try." Olivia turned to face him, and Marcus saw something in her eyes that he hadn't seen before. Vulnerability. Fear. And underneath it all, determination. "I meant what I said, Marcus. I'm not giving up on you. I don't care what the board says. I don't care what the press says. I know who you are. I know what you've done for this company. And I am not going to let anyone take that away." Marcus didn't know what to say. No one had ever fought for him like this. Not his ex-wife, not his former bosses. No one. "Why?" he asked quietly. "Why does this matter so much to you?" Olivia was silent for a long moment.
Then she walked over to him and took his hand. "Because 3 months ago, I was trapped in a burning car, and the only person who stopped to help me was a stranger. A man who had nothing to gain and everything to lose. A man who looked at me and saw a person worth saving, not a sterling, not a CEO, not a fortune to be inherited." Her eyes glistened. "You gave me my life back, Marcus. But more than that, you reminded me what it means to be human, to be brave, to do the right thing even when it's hard." She squeezed his hand. "So yes, I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to fight for us. Because some things are worth fighting for, even if the whole world thinks you're crazy." Marcus looked at this woman, this fierce, brilliant, beautiful woman who had turned his life upside down. "Us?" he repeated. Olivia smiled. "Is that okay?" "I'm not sure. I think I need to hear you say it again." "Us, Marcus. You and me. Whatever this is, whatever it's becoming. I want to find out, don't you?" Marcus thought about all the reasons he should say no. The age difference, the power imbalance, the chaos that was about to descend on both their lives. And then he thought about Zoe's words. "You're being stupid." Maybe his daughter was right. "Yeah," he said softly. "I do." The board meeting that afternoon was brutal. Marcus sat in the hallway outside the boardroom for 3 hours, while voices rose and fell behind the closed doors. He couldn't make out the words, but he could hear the tone. Accusatory, defensive, angry. At one point, he heard Richard's voice rise above the others. "This is exactly the kind of poor judgment I've been warning you about." And then Olivia's voice, clear and strong. "This company was built on taking chances on people others had written off. My father took a chance on every single person in this room, including you, Richard." Finally, the door opened. Victoria emerged first, her face unreadable. Behind her came the board members, filing out in silence. Richard was last, his expression stormy. "Marcus," Victoria said, "you can go in now." He found Olivia alone in the boardroom, sitting at the head of the table with her head in her hands. "What happened?" She looked up. Her eyes were red, but she was smiling. "We won. Sort of." "What does sort of mean?" "The board voted to keep you on staff. They acknowledged that your hiring followed proper protocols and that your work has been valuable to the company." But they also voted to launch an internal review of executive conduct. They want to make sure that personal relationships aren't influencing business decisions." She paused. "And they strongly recommended that you and I maintain a strictly professional relationship going forward." Marcus felt something sink in his chest. "I see." "Marcus, I didn't agree to it. I abstained from the vote. But my mother thought it was the best way to settle things down, at least temporarily. She's probably right. Probably, but I hate it." Marcus sat down next to her. "It's okay, Olivia. We can figure this out. We'll just take things slow. Keep it professional at work. See each other outside of here." "You'd do that? After everything that just happened?" "I told you I'd find out what this is. I meant it." Olivia reached over and took his hand. "You really are something else, Marcus Johnson." "So I've been told." They sat together in the empty boardroom, holding hands across the table. Two people who had found each other in the most unlikely circumstances and were determined to hold on. But their troubles were just beginning. 1 week later, Marcus came home to find a woman sitting on the steps outside his apartment building. She stood when she saw him,
Tall, beautiful. Hair he used to run his fingers through. Eyes that used to look at him with love before they turned cold.
Hello, Marcus. His blood turned to ice. Denise? Surprised to see me?
That's one word for it.
He stopped a few feet away from her, keeping his distance.
What are you doing here?
Can't a mother visit her daughter?
You haven't visited Zoe in 9 years. You haven't even called. So I'll ask again. What are you doing here?
Denise's smile faded. I heard about your new job. Sterling Industries. That's quite a step up from construction work.
How did you hear about that?
It was in the news, Marcus. The whole story. The fire, the rescue, the job offer. She paused. The relationship with the CEO's daughter.
Marcus's jaw tightened. That's none of your business.
Actually, it is. Because suddenly the man who could barely pay child support is working for $1 billion company. The man who I left because he had no ambition is dating one of the richest women in the state.
I never had no ambition. I had a bad back and a daughter who needed me. And now? Now you have money, connections, a future. Denise stepped closer. I want Zoe back, Marcus. The words hit him like a physical blow. What? I've been doing a lot of thinking about the choices I made, about the family I left behind, and I want to make things right. Make things right? You walked out on us when Zoe was 3 years old. You left a note on the kitchen table like we were a magazine subscription you were canceling. And now, 9 years later, you show up and say you want her back? I've changed, Marcus. I'm different now. Are you? Because from where I'm standing, you're exactly the same. You only want Zoe now because you think there's money involved. You think if you get custody, you'll get a piece of whatever I'm building. Denise's eyes flashed. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? What was fair about leaving your daughter to wake up one morning and find her mother gone? What was fair about making me explain to a 3-year-old why mommy wasn't coming back? I wasn't ready to be a mother. Then you shouldn't have become one. They stood face to face, years of anger and hurt boiling over. I'm going to file for custody, Denise said quietly. I've already talked to a lawyer. Given your new circumstances, I think I have a strong case. On what grounds? On the grounds that you've been so focused on your career and your new girlfriend that you've been neglecting our daughter. On the grounds that your lifestyle has become unstable. New job, new relationship, media attention. A judge might decide that Zoe would be better off in a more stable environment. A more stable environment? You don't even have a job. You don't have a home. You've been living God knows where for the past 9 years. I have an apartment now. I have a steady income. And I have a relationship with a man who's willing to help me raise Zoe. Marcus felt the ground shifting beneath his feet. You can't do this. You can't just walk back into our lives and take her away. I'm not taking her away, Marcus. I'm giving her the mother she deserves. The mother she deserves abandoned her when she was 3 years old. People change. No, Denise, people don't change. They just get better at hiding who they really are. Denise's face hardened. I'll see you in court, Marcus. She walked away without looking back. Marcus stood frozen, watching her disappear around the corner, his heart pounding, his mind racing. This couldn't be happening. After everything he'd been through, after everything he'd built, he couldn't lose Zoe. She was the only thing that had kept him going through the darkest years. She was the reason he got up every morning, the reason he kept fighting. Without her, nothing else mattered. Not the job, not the money, not Olivia. Nothing. He pulled out his phone and called the only person he could think of. Marcus? Olivia's voice was warm. Is everything okay? No, nothing's okay. Denise is back. Who's Denise? Marcus closed his eyes. My ex-wife, Zoe's mother, and she's filing for custody. The silence on the other end of the line lasted only a second, but it felt like forever. Where are you? Olivia asked. Outside my apartment. Stay there. I'm coming. Olivia, you don't have to. Yes, I do. You've spent your whole life saving other people, Marcus. It's time someone saved you. She hung up before he could argue. Marcus leaned against the building and looked up at the sky. 3 months ago, he'd run into a fire to save a stranger. Now that stranger was on her way to save him. And somewhere across town, Denise was making plans that could destroy everything he'd ever loved. Olivia arrived 20 minutes later in a black sedan that probably cost more than Marcus's annual salary at his old construction job. She stepped out before the car had fully stopped and walked straight to him, her eyes searching his face. Tell me everything. Marcus told her. About Denise showing up out of nowhere. About her threats. About the custody filing. About the fear that was clawing at his chest, making it hard to breathe. When he finished, Olivia was silent for a long moment. She can't win, she said finally. There's no way a judge would give custody to a woman who abandoned her child for 9 years. You don't know the family court system. Judges favor mothers, always. And Denise is smart. She knows how to play the victim. She knows how to make herself look good and make me look bad. Then we'll make sure the judge sees the truth. We? Olivia, this isn't your fight. Yes, it is. She took his hands in hers. Marcus, whether you like it or not, I'm in your life now. Zoe is in my life. And I'm not going to stand by and watch someone hurt either of you. You barely know us. I know enough. I know that you're a good man and a great father. I know that Zoe adores you and that you'd do anything for her. And I know that Denise doesn't deserve either of you. Marcus felt something crack inside him. The wall he'd built around his heart, the one that kept everyone at arm's length, was starting to crumble. I can't lose her, Olivia. She's everything to me. You won't, I promise. We're going to fight this together. How? I can't afford a lawyer, not a good one. Olivia smiled. Good thing I can. The next morning, Marcus found himself sitting in the office of Margaret Chen, one of the most respected family law attorneys in the state. Her walls were covered with degrees and awards, and photos of her with various politicians and celebrities. Margaret was in her 60s, with sharp eyes and silver hair cut in a no-nonsense bob. She listened to Marcus's story without interrupting, making occasional notes on a legal pad. When he finished, she set down her pen. Mr. Johnson, I'm going to be straight with you. This case is going to be ugly. I figured. Your ex-wife has retained Leonard Frost. He's a shark. He specializes in high-profile custody cases, and he has a reputation for winning by any means necessary. How do you know who she hired? Because Leonard called me this morning to gloat. He wanted me to know what I was walking into. Margaret leaned forward. He's going to attack your character, your job, your relationship with Miss Sterling. He's going to paint you as an opportunist who abandoned his responsibilities to chase money and romance. That's not true. I know. But truth doesn't always win in court. Perception does. She glanced at Olivia, who was sitting quietly beside Marcus. Miss Sterling, your involvement in this case is both an asset and a liability. What do you mean? On one hand, you can provide character witnesses, resources, and support that Mr. Johnson wouldn't otherwise have access to. On the other hand, your presence feeds into the narrative that Leonard is going to construct. He's going to argue that Mr. Johnson has been neglecting his daughter in favor of his wealthy new girlfriend. That's ridiculous, Olivia said. Marcus is the most devoted father I've ever seen. I believe you, but we need to be strategic about how we present your relationship to the court. Margaret turned back to Marcus. Tell me about Zoe. What's she like? Marcus's face softened. She's smart. Too smart for her own good sometimes. She's brave and kind, and she always sees the best in people. She's been through so much, but she never complains. She just keeps going. Does she know about the custody filing? Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first, figure out what we're dealing with. You need to tell her, soon. She's going to be a key witness in this case, and she needs to be prepared. I don't want to put her through that. I understand, but this is her life we're talking about, her future. She has a right to know, and she has a right to have her voice heard. That night, Marcus sat Zoe down at the kitchen table. Baby, I need to tell you something. Zoe looked at him with those wise eyes that always seemed to see right through him. It's about Mom, isn't it? Marcus blinked. How did you know? I saw her yesterday, outside school. She was watching me from across the street. Fear shot through Marcus's chest. She was watching you? Why didn't you tell me? Because I knew you'd freak out, like you're freaking out right now. Zoe, this is serious. She wants custody. She wants to take you away from me. Zoe was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I know. You know? She came up to me after you went inside the apartment. She said she wanted to talk. She said she missed me, and she wanted to be part of my life again. Marcus felt like the ground was opening up beneath him. What did you say? I said I needed to think about it. Zoe met his eyes. Dad, don't be mad. I know she left us. I know she hurt you. But she's still my mother. I've spent my whole life wondering why she left, wondering if it was my fault. And now she's here, saying she wants me back. It was never your fault, Zoe. Never. She left because of her own issues, her own problems. It had nothing to do with you. I know that in my head, but in my heart, Zoe's voice cracked. In my heart, I've always wondered if maybe I wasn't good enough, if maybe I did something wrong. Marcus pulled his daughter into his arms. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, the best thing. And there is nothing wrong with you. Do you understand? Nothing. Then why did she leave? It was the question Marcus had been dreading for 9 years. The question he'd never been able to answer. I don't know, baby. I've asked myself that 1,000 times, and I still don't know. Some people aren't ready to be parents. Some people can't handle the responsibility. And some people are just too broken to love anyone but themselves. Zoe pulled back and wiped her eyes. I don't want to live with her, Dad. I want to stay with you. Are you sure? Because if there's any part of you that wants to know her, that wants to give her a chance, I'm sure. Zoe's voice was firm. She had 9 years to come back. 9 years to call, to write, to show up on my birthday. And she didn't. Not once. And now she shows up because you got a good job and you're dating someone important? That's not love. That's greed. Marcus stared at his daughter, at this girl who had grown up so fast, who understood the world so much better than he'd realized. When did you get so wise? I told you. I learned from watching you. The custody hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. Those 6 weeks were the hardest of Marcus's life. Leonard Frost filed motion after motion, requesting financial records, employment history, character references. He subpoenaed Marcus's medical records from the back injury, trying to paint him as unstable and unreliable. He demanded access to Marcus's communications with Olivia, looking for anything that could be used against them. Margaret fought back on every front. She filed counter-motions, gathered her own evidence, built a case that showed Marcus for who he really was. A dedicated father who had sacrificed everything for his daughter. But the stress was taking its toll. Marcus couldn't sleep. He couldn't eat. He went to work every day and tried to focus, but his mind was always somewhere else. Always on Zoe. Always on the hearing. Olivia noticed. Of course she noticed.
"You're falling apart," she said one evening, finding him alone in his office after everyone else had gone home. "When was the last time you slept?"
"I don't remember." "Marcus, you can't keep going like this. You need to take care of yourself." "How? How am I supposed to take care of myself when my daughter might be taken away from me?" Olivia sat down beside him. "Do you trust Margaret?" "Yes." "Do you trust me?" "Yes." "Then trust that we're going to win this. Trust that the truth matters. Trust that a judge is going to see Denise for who she really is." "And if they don't? If the judge decides that a mother, even a terrible mother, is better than a single father?" "That's not going to happen. You can't know that." "Yes, I can. Because I've seen who you are. I've seen how Zoe looks at you. And I refuse to believe that any judge, no matter how biased, could look at your family and not see the love that holds it together." Marcus wanted to believe her. God, he wanted to believe her. But he'd been disappointed too many times to trust hope. 2 weeks before the hearing, something happened that changed everything. Marcus was in the testing facility, supervising a trial of the new protective gear he'd helped design. A team of firefighters from a local department had volunteered to test the equipment in a controlled burn scenario. Everything was going according to plan, until it wasn't. A structural support in the test building gave way. One of the firefighters, a young man named Danny, was trapped under a falling beam. His radio crackled with panic. "I'm stuck! I can't move! The fire's spreading!" Marcus didn't hesitate. He grabbed a set of the new gear, suited up in seconds, and ran into the building. "Marcus, no!" someone shouted behind him. "You're back!" He didn't stop. The heat hit him like a wall, but the new suit held. He could feel the temperature, but it wasn't burning him. The flame-resistant material was working exactly as designed. He found Danny pinned under the beam, flames licking at his boots. The young firefighter's eyes were wide with fear. "I've got you," Marcus said. "I've got you." He braced himself and lifted. His back screamed in protest, but he didn't stop. He lifted until Danny could crawl free, then grabbed him by the arm and dragged him toward the exit. They made it out just as the roof collapsed behind them. Paramedics swarmed around Danny, checking his vitals, loading him onto a stretcher. He was shaken, but unharmed. Marcus stood watching, his whole body trembling from adrenaline and pain. Victoria appeared beside him. "Are you out of your mind?" "Probably." "You could have been killed." "But I wasn't, and neither was Danny." Victoria shook her head, but there was something in her eyes that looked almost like pride. "The gear worked." "Yeah, it worked. You just proved that your designs can save lives in the most dramatic way possible." Marcus hadn't thought about it that way. He'd just seen someone in trouble and reacted. But Victoria was right. The gear had performed flawlessly. In a real emergency, under real conditions, it had done exactly what it was supposed to do. That night, every news station in the state ran the story. Sterling Industries consultant saves firefighter in dramatic rescue. The footage from the testing facility's cameras went viral. Marcus running into the burning building. Marcus lifting the beam. Marcus dragging Danny to safety as flames erupted behind them. And everywhere, people were talking about the man who'd run into fire twice to save strangers. Margaret called him the next morning. "Have you seen the news?" "Hard to miss." "This changes everything, Marcus. Leonard Frost was planning to paint you as reckless and irresponsible. But now? Now you're a national hero. Again.
There's no way a judge can rule against you without looking like they're punishing a man for being too brave. I didn't do it for the publicity. I know. That's what makes it so powerful. The day of the custody hearing arrived. Marcus put on his best suit, the one Olivia had bought him months ago. He looked at himself in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. So much had changed since that night on Highway 58. He was different now, stronger, more confident, more willing to believe that good things could happen to people like him. But none of that would matter if he lost Zoe. The courtroom was smaller than Marcus had expected. Judge Patricia Williams presided from the bench, a heavy-set woman with gray hair and no-nonsense glasses. She'd reviewed all the documents, heard all the motions. Now it was time for the actual testimony. Denise went first. She was dressed conservatively, her hair pulled back, her makeup minimal. She spoke softly about her regrets, her struggles, her desire to make amends. She cried when she talked about the years she'd missed with Zoe. "I made a terrible mistake," she said, her voice breaking. "I was young and scared, and I didn't know how to be a mother. But I've grown since then. I've changed, and all I want is a chance to be part of my daughter's life." Leonard Frost painted a picture of a woman redeemed, a mother who had found her way back to the child she'd abandoned. Then it was Margaret's turn. "Ms. Johnson," she said, using Denise's married name deliberately, "you say you've changed, that you've grown. Can you tell me what steps you've taken over the past 9 years to maintain contact with your daughter?" Denise hesitated. I wanted to reach out, but I was afraid. I didn't know if Marcus would let me see her." "Did you ever try? Did you ever send a letter, make a phone call, send a birthday card?" "No, but in 9 years, you never once attempted to contact your daughter?" "I was working on myself. I needed to become the person she deserved." "And in all that time, did you pay any child support?" Denise's face tightened. "I wasn't in a financial position to. Mr. Johnson raised Zoe alone, on a construction worker's salary, while dealing with a debilitating back injury. He worked double shifts, took odd jobs, did whatever it took to provide for her. And in all that time, you contributed nothing?" "That's not fair. I couldn't or wouldn't, Ms. Johnson," Leonard objected. The judge sustained it, but the damage was done. Then Marcus took the stand. He told his story simply, without embellishment. The years of struggling, the fear of not being enough, the determination to give Zoe everything she needed, even when he had nothing. "Mr. Johnson," Margaret asked, "why do you think Denise has come back now, after all these years?" "Objection," Leonard said. "Calls for speculation." "Withdrawn," Margaret said smoothly. "Mr. Johnson, how did you feel when you learned that your ex-wife was seeking custody?" "Terrified," Marcus said honestly. "Zoe is my whole world. The thought of losing her—" He paused, collecting himself. "I've faced a lot of scary things in my life. Burning buildings, financial ruin, the loneliness of raising a child alone. But nothing has ever scared me as much as the idea of being separated from my daughter. What kind of relationship do you have with Zoe?" "She's my best friend. I know that sounds strange because she's 12 and I'm her father, but she's the person I talk to about everything. She knows me better than anyone, and I'd like to think I know her too. If the court were to grant custody to Denise, what do you think would happen?" Marcus looked directly at his ex-wife. "Zoe would be devastated, not because she doesn't want to know her mother, but because she'd feel like she was being punished for something that wasn't her fault. She'd feel abandoned all over again."
Denise flinched. Finally, it was Zoe's turn. Margaret had prepared her, but she'd also made clear that Zoe should speak from the heart. The judge would be able to tell if she was coached. Zoe walked to the witness stand with her head held high. She looked small up there, but her voice was steady. "Zoe," Judge Williams said gently, "do you understand why you're here today?" "Yes, Your Honor. My mom wants me to live with her." "And how do you feel about that?" Zoe took a deep breath. "I've spent my whole life wondering why she left. I used to make up stories in my head. Maybe she was sick. Maybe she was in witness protection. Maybe she was a spy." A sad smile crossed her face. "Kids make up stories when the truth is too hard to understand."
And now? How do you feel now that she's back? Confused? Angry? A little sad? Zoe looked at Denise. "I wanted to hate you. For so long, I wanted to hate you for leaving us. But I couldn't. Because you're still my mom, even if you weren't here." Denise's eyes filled with tears. "But wanting to know you and wanting to live with you are different things," Zoe continued. "My dad has been there for me every single day. When I was sick, he stayed up all night. When I was scared, he held my hand. When I needed help with homework or advice about friends or just someone to talk to, he was there. Always." "And your mother?" "She wasn't." Zoe's voice hardened slightly. "She wasn't there for any of it. And I don't think it's fair that she gets to show up now, when things are finally good, and try to take me away from the person who never left." "Zoe, if the court decides that you should live with your mother, what would you do?" Zoe was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I'd survive, because that's what my dad taught me to do. But a piece of me would die inside, because I'd know that the court cared more about biology than love. And that's not right. That's not fair." The courtroom was silent. Judge Williams looked at Zoe with something like respect in her eyes. "Thank you, Zoe. You can step down now." The judge called a recess to consider her decision. Marcus sat in the hallway with Olivia on one side and Zoe on the other. Victoria had come too, sitting quietly nearby, a steady presence of support. "You did amazing, baby," Marcus told Zoe. "I'm so proud of you." "I just told the truth." "I know. That's what made it so powerful." An hour passed, then 2. Every minute felt like an eternity. Finally, the bailiff called them back into the courtroom. Judge Williams took her seat and looked out at the people assembled before her. "This case has been one of the most emotionally charged I've presided over in my 20 years on the bench," she began. "On one side, we have a mother who abandoned her child and is now seeking to rebuild that relationship. On the other, a father who has dedicated his life to raising his daughter under extremely difficult circumstances." She paused, her gaze settling on Denise. "Ms. Johnson, I believe that you regret your decision to leave your family. I believe that you genuinely want to be part of your daughter's life. But wanting something and deserving it are two different things." Denise's face went pale. "You had 9 years to demonstrate your commitment to your daughter. 9 years to reach out, to contribute, to show that you were more than the woman who walked away. And you did nothing. Nothing until your ex-husband's circumstances changed, until there was money and status and opportunity involved." The judge turned to Marcus. "Mr. Johnson, I have rarely seen a more devoted parent. You have sacrificed everything for your daughter. You have faced challenges that would have broken a lesser man, and you have emerged with your integrity intact. The bond between you and Zoe is evident to anyone with eyes to see." Marcus held his breath. "After careful consideration of all the evidence, including the testimony of Zoe herself, I am denying the petition for custody change.
Full custody will remain with Marcus Johnson. Relief flooded through Marcus like a wave. He pulled Zoe into his arms, feeling her tears wet against his shirt. Additionally, the judge continued, I am granting Mr. Johnson's request for a formal visitation agreement. Miss Johnson may request supervised visits with Zoe, but only if Zoe consents. The decision will ultimately rest with the child. Denise sat frozen, her face a mask of shock and disappointment. Judge Williams banged her gavel. This court is adjourned. Outside the courthouse, Marcus stood with Zoe, Olivia, and Victoria, still trying to process what had happened. We won, Zoe said, as if she couldn't quite believe it. We actually won. You won, Marcus told her. Your testimony made the difference. I just told the truth. Sometimes that's the bravest thing anyone can do. Olivia stepped forward and hugged Zoe. You were incredible in there. I've never seen anyone handle that kind of pressure so well. Thanks. Zoe looked up at her father with a mischievous smile. So does this mean you're going to stop pretending you're not in love with her? Marcus choked. Olivia laughed. I think that's our cue to give you two a moment, Victoria said, steering Zoe toward the car. We'll wait over here. When they were alone, Olivia turned to Marcus. So, are you going to stop pretending? Marcus looked at this woman who had changed his life in ways he never could have imagined, who had fought for him, believed in him, stood by him when everything was falling apart. I don't know what I'm doing, he admitted. I don't know how this works. I'm 38 years old, I've got a bad back and a 12-year-old daughter, and enough baggage to fill a warehouse. And I'm 25. I run a billion-dollar company, and I've never had a real relationship in my life because everyone I meet is more interested in my money than in me. We don't make sense. No, we don't. People are going to talk. Let them. Richard Caldwell is going to use this against you. Richard Caldwell can go to hell. Marcus laughed despite himself. You really don't care, do you? About what other people think? No. I care about what's real. I care about what matters. Olivia took his hands. And you matter, Marcus. You and Zoe. More than any of the other stuff. Olivia, don't, she cut him off. Don't tell me all the reasons why this can't work. I've heard them all in my own head 1,000 times. Just tell me one thing. What? Do you love me? The question hung in the air between them. Marcus thought about all the walls he'd built around his heart. All the times he'd been hurt, disappointed, abandoned. All the reasons he had to protect himself. And then he thought about Zoe's words from months ago. You're scared of good things happening. Maybe it was time to stop being scared. Yeah, he said quietly. I do. Olivia's face lit up with a smile that made Marcus's heart ache. Then that's all that matters. She kissed him, right there on the courthouse steps, in front of anyone who cared to look. And for the first time in as long as he could remember, Marcus Johnson believed that maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. You're finished, Johnson! Richard Caldwell slammed both fists on the conference table so hard the coffee cups rattled. His face was purple with rage, veins bulging at his temples, years of resentment exploding in a single moment of fury. You think you've won? You think because you rescued some firefighter and won a custody case that you matter? You're nothing. A charity case. A PR stunt. And I will destroy everything you've built. Marcus didn't flinch. He stood on the opposite side of the table, calm, steady, his eyes locked on Richard's. Behind him stood Olivia, Victoria, and 3 members of the board who had called this emergency meeting. Are you done? Marcus asked quietly. Done? I haven't even started. Richard pointed a trembling finger at him. I have evidence. Evidence that you falsified your credentials, that you lied on your application, that this whole thing has been one elaborate con from the beginning. What evidence? Richard pulled a folder from his briefcase and threw it across the table, papers scattered everywhere. Your firefighting record. There are gaps,
Inconsistencies. Months where you claim to be on active duty, but the department has no record of you working. Marcus picked up one of the papers, looked at it, then looked at Richard. Those were the months I was on medical leave, after my back injury. It's all documented. That's not what my sources say. Your sources are wrong. My sources are never wrong. Then maybe you should get better sources. Victoria stepped forward. Richard, this is enough. We've reviewed every piece of Marcus's background. Everything checks out. His credentials are legitimate. His work here has been exemplary. Of course you would say that. You're the one who brought him in. You're as guilty as he is. Guilty of what, exactly? Of compromising this company, of putting your personal feelings above the good of Sterling Industries, of giving someone a chance? Victoria's voice was ice. Of recognizing talent that others overlooked? Of building relationships based on character instead of credentials? Richard's face twisted. You're all blind, every single one of you. This man has bewitched you. Him and his sob story and his hero act. But I see through it. I see what he really is. And what's that? Marcus asked. An opportunist, a con man, someone who saw a chance to worm his way into a wealthy family and took it. Olivia moved to stand beside Marcus. That's funny, Richard, because from where I'm standing, the only opportunist in this room is you. Excuse me? You've been undermining this company for months, leaking information to the press, sabotaging projects, turning board members against each other. Olivia's voice was deadly calm. Did you think we wouldn't notice? Richard's face went pale. That's absurd. I've given 20 years to this company. And in those 20 years, you've never stopped resenting the fact that you weren't in charge. Olivia pulled out her phone and placed it on the table. I have recordings, Richard. Emails, text messages, a paper trail that shows exactly what you've been doing. You're bluffing. Am I? Olivia pressed play. Richard's voice filled the room, unmistakable. The Sterling girl is in over her head. Once the board sees how badly she's mismanaging things, they'll have no choice but to remove her. And when they do, I'll be ready. The recording continued. More conversations, more scheming, more evidence of a man who had been working against the company he claimed to serve. When it ended, the room was silent. Richard looked around at the faces staring at him. The board members who had once been his allies. Victoria, whose trust he had betrayed. Olivia, who he had underestimated. And Marcus, the man he had tried so hard to destroy. This doesn't change anything, Richard said, but his voice had lost its fire. I built this company. I made it what it is. No, Victoria said. My husband built this company. You just rode his coattails. And now it's time for you to go. You can't do this. I have a contract. Your contract has a morality clause, which you violated approximately 47 times based on what we've documented. Victoria nodded to the board members. The vote has already been taken, Richard. You're terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you out. 2 guards appeared at the door. Richard stood frozen, his world crumbling around him. For a moment, Marcus almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then Richard turned and looked at him with pure hatred. This isn't over, Johnson. I'll find a way to... It's over, Marcus said. You lost. Accept it and move on. How can you be so calm after everything I tried to do to you? Marcus considered the question.
Because I've faced worse than you, Richard. I've faced fire and loss and fear. I've faced the possibility of losing my daughter. Compared to all that, you're just noise. Richard opened his mouth to respond, but the security guards took his arms and led him away. The door closed behind him with a sound like finality. Olivia let out a breath. Well, that was dramatic. Are you okay? Marcus asked her. I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. That's been a long time coming. Victoria sank into a chair. 20 years. I trusted him for 20 years. He fooled all of us, Mom. Not Marcus. Marcus never trusted him. Marcus shrugged. I've had a lot of experience with people who smile while they're planning to stab you in the back. You learn to recognize the signs. One of the board members, an older man named Harrison, who had been silent throughout the confrontation, cleared his throat. Mr. Johnson, on behalf of the board, I want to apologize. We should have recognized Richard's behavior sooner, and we should have supported you more vocally. No apology necessary. Nevertheless, we'd like to make it up to you. Harrison looked at the other board members, who nodded. We've discussed this, and we'd like to offer you a promotion. Vice President of Safety Innovation. It would give you direct oversight of all product development and testing. Marcus stared at him. I've only been here 6 months. 6 months in which you've revolutionized our approach to safety equipment. The gear you helped design has already saved lives. Real lives. That firefighter you pulled from the test facility, Danny, he wrote us a letter. Want to know what it said? Marcus shook his head. Harrison pulled out a piece of paper and read, Marcus Johnson didn't hesitate. He didn't think about his own safety. He just ran in and saved me. That's the kind of person who should be designing the equipment that protects us, because he understands what it means to put your life on the line for others. Harrison set down the letter. We don't promote people based on credentials, Mr. Johnson. We promote them based on character, and yours is beyond question. Marcus looked at Olivia. She was smiling, her eyes bright with pride. What do you think? He asked her. I think you should say yes. Want to cause problems? You being CEO and me being VP? Probably, but I've never been afraid of problems. She took his hand. Besides, someone once told me that some things are worth fighting for, even if the whole world thinks you're crazy. Marcus smiled. Sounds like a smart person. She has her moments. He turned back to Harrison. I accept, on one condition. Name it. I want to hire my own team, people with field experience, firefighters, paramedics, rescue workers, people who know what it's like to be in the middle of a crisis and have equipment fail. That's an excellent idea. And I want to create a scholarship program for kids from disadvantaged backgrounds who want to become first responders. Full funding for training and education. Harrison raised an eyebrow. That would be a significant investment. It would also be the right thing to do. This company exists because of first responders. They deserve more than just good equipment. They deserve opportunities. The board members exchanged glances. Then Harrison nodded. I think we can make that work. 6 months later, Marcus stood at a podium in the Sterling Industries auditorium, looking out at a crowd of faces. In the front row sat Zoe, now 13, beaming with pride. Beside her was Olivia, elegant in a blue dress, her hand resting on her slightly rounded stomach. They hadn't announced the pregnancy yet. They wanted to wait until after today. Behind them sat Victoria, Captain Rodriguez from the fire department, Margaret Chen, and dozens of others who had become part of Marcus's life over the past year. When I was asked to speak at this event, Marcus began, I didn't know what to say. I'm not good with speeches. I'm not good with words in general. I'm better with actions. A ripple of laughter went through the crowd. But someone told me that sometimes the most important thing you can do is share your story. Because you never know who might be listening. You never know whose life might be changed by hearing that someone else went through what they're going through. He paused, gathering his thoughts. A year ago, I was a construction worker with a bad back and a daughter I could barely support. I'd been a firefighter once, but an injury took that away from me. I'd been a husband once, but my wife walked out when things got hard. I'd been a lot of things, and I'd lost most of them. The room was silent, hanging on his words. And then one day, driving home from work, I saw a car flip on the highway. I saw flames, and I saw someone trapped inside. He looked at Olivia. I didn't think about the risk. I didn't think about my back or my job or what might happen to my daughter if something went wrong.
I just saw a person who needed help, and I ran. Olivia's eyes glistened. That decision changed my life. Not because I got a job out of it, or money, or any of the things that came after. It changed my life because it reminded me who I was. It reminded me that I'm not just a construction worker, or an ex-firefighter, or a single dad. I'm someone who runs toward the fire when everyone else runs away. He gripped the podium. Every single one of you has that person inside you. That hero. That person who sees someone in trouble and doesn't walk away. Maybe you haven't had the chance to show it yet. Maybe you think you're too old, or too young, or too broken to make a difference. His voice strengthened. You're not. You're never too anything to help someone in need. You're never too small to matter. You're never too damaged to be rebuilt. He looked at Zoe. My daughter taught me that. When her mother left, when I was struggling just to survive, she was the one who kept me going. She was the one who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. She's 13 years old, and she's the bravest person I know. Zoe wiped her eyes, smiling through the tears. So here's what I want you to take away from today. Don't wait for the perfect moment to do the right thing. Don't wait until you have more money, more time, more resources. The moment is now. The person who needs you is right in front of you. And the only thing stopping you from being a hero is the decision to act. Marcus stepped back from the podium. Thank you. The applause was thunderous. That night, after the event was over and the guests had gone home, Marcus sat on the porch of the house he and Olivia had bought together. A real house, with a yard and a garage and enough rooms for the family they were building. Zoe was inside, video chatting with friends. Victoria had gone back to her own home, promising to visit soon. The night was quiet, peaceful, full of possibility. Olivia came out and sat beside him, resting her head on his shoulder. Good speech, she said. I meant every word. I know. That's what made it good. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. Marcus? Yeah? Are you happy? He thought about the question, really thought about it. A year ago, he would have laughed at the idea of happiness. Happiness was for other people, people with money and security and futures that didn't involve constant struggle. But now? Yeah, he said slowly. I think I am. You think? I know. He turned to look at her. I have Zoe. I have you. I have work that matters and people who believe in me. I have more than I ever thought I'd have. And the baby? Marcus put his hand on her stomach, feeling the slight swell that would grow over the coming months. The baby is going to be the luckiest kid in the world, because they're going to have you for a mother, and Zoe for a sister, and you for a father. That too, Olivia laughed. You're still not good at accepting compliments. I'm working on it. She kissed him softly. Work harder. The front door opened and Zoe came out, phone in hand. Hey, lovebirds, break it up. I have news. What news? Remember that essay contest I entered? The one about heroes? Marcus nodded. Zoe had written an essay about him, about the fire, about what it meant to have a father who ran toward danger instead of away from it. She'd entered it without telling him,
and he'd only found out when her teacher called to say it had been selected as a finalist. "They announced the winner today," Zoe said. "I came in second." "Second place is amazing, baby." "I know, but that's not the news." She held up her phone. "The news is that they want to publish all the finalist essays in a national magazine."
"Which means millions of people are going to read my story about you." Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. "Zoe, I know you don't like attention, but Dad, this story matters. Our story matters. And if it inspires even one person to run toward the fire instead of away from it, then it's worth sharing." She sat down on his other side, sandwiching him between the two people he loved most in the world. "Besides," she added, "I'm pretty sure Olivia's going to end up being famous anyway. CEO, hero's girlfriend, soon-to-be mom. The media's going to have a field day." "She's not wrong," Olivia admitted. Marcus looked at his daughter, then at the woman carrying his child. He thought about everything they'd been through. The fire, the rescue, the job, the custody battle, Richard Caldwell, the fear and the doubt, and the moments when it felt like everything was falling apart. And he thought about how, somehow, against all odds, they'd come through it, together. "You know what?" he said. "Let them write about us. Let them tell our story. Because it's a good story. It's a story about love and courage and second chances. And the world needs more stories like that." Zoe grinned. "Does this mean you're finally going to let me post that video of you dancing at the company picnic?" "Absolutely not." "Worth a shot." Olivia laughed and leaned into him. Zoe did the same. And Marcus sat there, surrounded by his family, feeling the warmth of their bodies against his, listening to the crickets sing in the summer night. A year ago, he'd been alone, struggling, barely surviving. Now he had everything. Not because he'd gotten lucky, not because he'd married rich or won the lottery or stumbled into good fortune, because he'd made a choice. In that moment on the highway, with flames roaring and a stranger screaming for help, he'd made the choice to run toward the fire instead of away from it. And that choice had led him here, to this house, to this family, to this life. "Dad?" Zoe's voice was soft. "Yeah, baby?" "I love you." Marcus pulled her closer. "I love you too." "And I love both of you," Olivia added, "even though you're both ridiculous." "We prefer entertainingly eccentric," Zoe said. "You prefer it. I'm the normal one in this family." "Keep telling yourself that." They laughed together, the sound carrying out into the night. And Marcus Johnson, the man who had run into a fire and come out the other side with everything he'd ever wanted, finally let himself believe that this was real, that it would last, that he deserved it. Because he did. He'd earned every single moment of this happiness with blood and sweat and sacrifice, with years of struggle and pain and never giving up, with the simple, powerful decision to help someone in need, regardless of the cost. That's what heroes do. Not the heroes in movies with their superpowers and their perfect hair and their choreographed fight scenes. Real heroes. Ordinary people who see suffering and refuse to look away. Who run toward danger when every instinct screams at them to run away. Who love fiercely and fight relentlessly and never ever stop believing that they can make a difference. Marcus Johnson was one of those heroes. And so was Olivia, and so was Zoe, and so was Victoria, and Margaret, and Captain Rodriguez, and all the firefighters and paramedics and first responders who put their lives on the line every single day. Heroes aren't born. They're forged in fire. And sometimes, if they're very lucky, they get to live happily ever after. Marcus closed his eyes and listened to his daughter's laughter.
felt his future wife's heartbeat against his arm, and knew with absolute certainty that he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Not because fate had brought him here, because he had chosen it, every step of the way. And he would choose it again, 1,000 times over, without hesitation.
Because some things are worth running into the fire for. Family is one of them. Love is another. And the belief that no matter how dark things get, there's always a way forward. That's the most important one of all. Marcus Johnson had learned that lesson the hard way, and he would never forget it. Not ever. The end.